So today we are taking a look at Shadowlands. Alpha just started a couple of days ago, and no, I do not have access to the alpha, but Blizzard, if you want to hook me up, go for it. In this video we'll take a look at a couple of items and abilities that are directly or indirectly inspired by Classic's success, and Blizzard obviously trying to appeal to Classic players with Shadowlands as well. Before we go any further, I just want to say that I think this is all good changes so far, and pretty much everything I've heard about Shadowlands so far has been good, and especially for me as a gold maker, some of these changes will make a huge impact on how I make steady gold over time, which is just lovely to see. First off, let's just look at some abilities. Warlocks are getting Curse of Elements, Curse of Recklessness, and Curse of Doom back in every single spec, so they don't have to be only Affliction to have access to them. Mages also get access to Arcane Explosion, Fire Blast, Fire Frostbolt, Mirror Image, and Fire and Frostward in all specs, as well as Alter Time making a return, an absolute insane ability that generated a lot of Twitch and YouTube highlights. Hunters also get their tranquilizing shot back, paladins get their auras back, rogues get access to poisons in every spec, as well as the ability to infuse their Crimson Vial with fun powers by pickpocketing enemies to obtain ingredients to mix into their vial. This is not really Classic inspired, I just think it's a great ability. Exactly what bonuses you can get from your Crimson Vial by doing this is still unknown, but I'd guess it's different ways of increasing your DPS, and maybe it works like a potion that increases your stats, agility, haste or crit, or something similar to that. Last but not least, warriors also get their shattering throwback. There are obviously a lot more changes as well, and a lot more class abilities and talents and so on that is similar to Classic, but these are the highlights. The basics of it is this. The last few expansions have been focusing on arcane mages being arcane mages, and fire mages being fire mage, and by doing that for too long they kinda forgot that they are all mages. They should have many spells in common, and instead of focusing on spec identity, they are now focusing on class identity. Additionally, it seems like they're now working on making some specs be good single target, others be good multi-target, and others be good for insane AoE, kinda like Classic. For example, in Classic, Whirlwind was capped at hitting only a few targets. Same with Blade Flurry for rogues as it only hit one extra target, while in retail it hits every single target. You also have classes like Demon Hunters that have many insane AoE abilities, and basically, in retail you have single target DPS specs and AoE DPS specs. There's no real multi-target specs that specialize on 2 to 4 targets except for maybe dot classes that can obviously dot wield like Affliction Warlocks, Boomkins or Shadow Priests. It looks like in Shadowlands they're trying to bring a couple of melee classes down to where they also function as multi-target DPSers instead of massive AoE DPS classes. For example, Demon Hunter's Blade Dance only hits 5 enemies instead of infinite amounts of enemies, and Feral's Brutal Slash only hits up to 5 enemies instead of all enemies. Survival Hunter's Butchery also only hits up to 5 enemies instead of all enemies. Same goes for Multi-Shot for Hunters and Divine Storm for Paladins. You also have some abilities that hits up to 8 enemies instead of all enemies, and abilities here include Blood Death Knights, Bone Storm and Consumption, Hunter's Barrage, Rogues, Shuriken Storm, Warlock Demons, Fellstorm, and Warriors Blade Storm, Ravager, and Whirlwind. Basically, it looks like they don't want melee DPSers to do the massive amounts of AoE they currently do, and rather focus on ranged DPS doing the AoE DPS, since mages are basically untouched here, and are still able to do insane amounts of AoE DPS just like in Classic, and Warlocks are also pretty much untouched, same for Boomkin and Shadow Priests. To be honest, this change is gonna suck in the beginning because they're basically taking away your class's powers, but I imagine they're going to replace those powers with other powers anyway, and I do think it's a good change for the game as it will spice up the meta for both raids, Mythic Plus dungeons, and PvP as well. It should also be mentioned that all of this is still early alpha, and could be changed before beta or eventual release, but according to Ian's response in Slutbag's interview, it sounds like this is what they're going with. Next up we have a couple of early data mined consumables and items in Shadowlands. The professions we'll focus on here are alchemy, blacksmithing, enchanting, and jewel crafting, and for the first 3 of those you will see several similarities to Classic, and this is an additional hidden gem of Blizzard actually listening to the community and learning from Classic's success. although some of it is also basically copying items from Classic into Shadowlands. So they're basically copying items from a 16-year-old game into a new game. First up we have Alchemy, and here we have different potions and flasks as always, and we also have this new special reagent called Alchemical Concoction, which is supposed to increase the duration of your flask. I am not sure exactly how this will be used, as it says it's a crafting reagent, and it also doesn't say whether or not you directly use it to increase the flask duration, or if you have to craft something, and if this item is soulbound or so on, but since it doesn't say binds on pickup, I'm going to assume you can sell this. That kinda reminds me of the transmute you can do in Warlords of Draenor to make something similar to this, which was used to create flasks, I believe. Basically, this could be a transmute which could have a cooldown, which could be relevant to Raiders, which once again is a throwback to Classic, and which is also a great gold making opportunity for us gold makers. And if it is a transmute with a cooldown, there's options to set up alts for passive gold as well. However, the most notable change with Alchemy, in my opinion, is the Embalmer's Oil and Shadow Core Oil. We haven't seen weapon oils in many expansions. I think they died out in TBC, or after TBC, because I know we had oils in TBC, but I don't think we had them in Wrath. These weapon oils bear strong similarities with the Wizard and Mana oils for Classic. For example, the Embalmer's Oil has a chance to heal you, or give you a shield, and the Shadow Core Oil has a chance to proc additional damage proc on the target. Basically, tank and DPS oils, so we're missing a healer-specific weapon oil. These oils only last 10 minutes, meaning raiders will burn through these in raids if they're looking to optimalize, which once again gives gold makers a huge opportunity to make gold. And since it is something that will be used in raids and Mythic Plus, it's also something that makes gold making relevant for the entire expansion, and it makes alchemy an even stronger profession than it already is. You'll love to see it. For blacksmithing, you have weight stones, sharpening stones, and shackles, making a return from Classic. These are basically consumables you use on your weapon to increase your damage, and it lasts for 1 hour, giving blacksmiths an option to make steady gold through the expansion as well. Apparently, blacksmiths are also going to be able to craft legendary armor, but I'd suppose that will work kinda like back in Legion, so leatherworkers and tailors will make legendary armors relevant to their profession and so on. But blacksmiths crafting legendaries kinda gives a throwback to Classic because of the Sulfuron Hammer. For enchanting, we have a change that I think we all saw coming. Enchants in BFA have been pretty boring, only being able to enchant boring armor pieces. For Shadowlands, you can once again enchant your chest, cloak, boot, bracers and gloves, as well as weapons obviously. Once again, I think this change is relevant to Classic's success, because having the option to enchant all your gear, and especially important pieces of gear, is always good to have, and it increases the necessity of enchanting as well as the complexity of it. Having more parts to enchant allows you to have several different unique enchants at the same time, like stats, health, movement speed, and so on. Another change to enchanting that kinda reminds me of Classic and TBC is that they can now make top tier reagents for other professions, which is Enchanted Desolate Leather, Enchanted Lightless Silk, and Enchanted Bars. This is a very welcome change if you ask me, and it reinforces the necessity of having an enchanter or knowing an enchanter once again. It looks like they're really building upon the necessity of teamwork, which is basically what Classic was all about, as you needed people with other professions than you had in order to progress your own profession. The last change we'll look at today is a fast one, and it's jewel crafting. So far it seems like this is the same old profession, being able to craft the usual gems, necks and rings, but now they can also create enhanced gems, which serve as an optional crafting reagent you can use to guarantee a particular stat on your crafted item. This one is really interesting. For example, using a haste gem will guarantee you have haste on your crafted item. The one thing we do not know yet is if this gem is an optional crafting reagent only for jewel crafters, or if you can trade it to a tailor and guarantee you get haste stat on one of your tailoring crafts. Based on the fact that they are enforcing teamwork in this expansion, I would think it's tradable, so you can craft this gem and trade it or sell it to a tailor, who can then craft an item with random stats, but by using this gem he can decide one or both of those random stats before crafting. So there really are a lot of great changes so far, and it is fairly obvious that Blizzard are trying to go back to their classic roots, or at least implement some of the good things from Classic into Shadowlands. The way it looks right now, it seems like this will spice up gold making even more, and it seems like professions will play a huge part in that. And it also seems like pretty much every profession is relevant in some way, and every profession kinda ties into each other. It will definitely be fun to see how all of this plays out, and I really do hope I get alpha or beta access once more stuff gets introduced to the game, so I can help you guys get as prepared as possible to make as much gold as possible in Shadowlands. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Shadowlands. Are you hyped for it, and do you like the changes so far? Shout out to my patrons for supporting my channel. You guys are absolute legends. If you want to become a patron as well, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, and I will do my best to help you make as much gold as possible, both in Classic, TBC and Shadowlands. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.